conventional wisdom says dark orange bar, more is better. In reality, there are diminishing returns, right? And so you create this sort of lighter orange upward sloping line that plateaus right around the point at which you're meeting customer expectations and you're delivering as promised, but nothing more. And that's a really important point, because if you go any further than that, you run into what we call our zone of wasted effort here, right? The service above and beyond expectation that you think will drive growth, but ultimately doesn't, has you spinning your wheels and spending a lot of time, right? And effort and energy and investment that's not really necessary. It's not getting you the outcomes that you're looking for in terms of growth.
Got it. And just to put a fine point on that, Mike, because I mean, I found this research so fascinating when we first published it. Product success and service drives retention, but it does not drive growth. And to your point, this zone of wasted effort, when it comes down to that product success and service, and you said delighting our customers, how many of us have been asked or believe we are very customer-centric organizations? And I think that's a mismatch, right? Being a customer-centric organization does not necessarily mean you over-deliver on the product and service and success, because as we said, it's going to retain, but not necessarily drive growth. That zone of wasted effort, obviously we talk about this a lot in the sales world, the nail versus the wedge, a little bit differently represented here. I think the question that we got to ask ourselves as commercial folks, as account managers in this instance, of what dictates where we spend that time? What dictates where we spend that zone of wasted effort? So we are actually looking to hear from all of you in our first poll question, or in this poll question. How do you decide where to spend your time? And that should be popping up now. We'll give everybody a few minutes to respond to that. But what we're curious to know is how much strategy is behind where you are disproportionately spending that time, specifically the zone of wasted effort. So we did some back of the envelope math on this, on the next page, which you'll recognize a bit of a unique challenger pain calculator. But let me just orient you to what you're seeing. We are assuming here that this account manager has 20 accounts that they manage. And those accounts can be categorized into three: low effort, medium effort, high effort, and roughly assign the percentage you see there in terms of the number of accounts. So 4 in low effort, 8 medium effort, 8 in high effort. And again, real simple back of the envelope math. If you take a low effort account, which is low touch, versus your most demanding high effort account, maybe the low effort takes an hour of work, and the high effort takes about 5 times that. So the math we do is across your pool, across your portfolio, that's 70 hours of total work. So what do? You either work a 70-hour work week, or you try and do half your accounts one week and half the other, not to mention your other responsibilities that you have, internal meetings and otherwise. So it's no wonder that many account managers go a day, a 2, a week, a month, maybe without engaging as robustly, Mike, as they could or should be with some of these accounts. So not necessarily the level of strategy that we would want to see being spent on this account growth, especially as we look towards 2021. I mean, Mike, we've all got big growth numbers slapped on us. There's big expectations for 2021. I imagine many of that is coming from, existing customers versus new business, and ensuring we've got a strategy that's going to make good use of our team's time, engagement. There's a lot of downstream effects here.
Yep. And that's, if we go back to the 3 primary objectives, right, that's where the research gets really interesting. So what is it that actually works from a retention perspective? We've already talked a little bit about retention. We do see a lift there, but most importantly, growth and defense against the competition. And so as I dig back into the research here, right, the guiding question was really what are sellers actually doing? What are the behaviors that are correlated to the key outcomes we're looking for: retention, growth, and account defense? And everything we tested really boiled down into 4 categories or behaviors, and I'd kind of bullet them out below on the screen here. But from left to right, you see what we've talked about already: product success and customer service, right? We've been over this. It's delivering the value that you initially promised in the sale and driving utilization and serving above and beyond, hopefully not too far above and beyond expectation. Aggressive selling, exactly as it sounds, right? Trying to push product as much as possible. Give you a hint in terms of how that turns out, right? From an account growth perspective. Confidence in account team. Think of this as serving as sort of the quarterback of the relationship. You're exposing the customer to the broader team that's going to be working on their behalf. You're tapping into those experts and specialists when required. And then finally, there's this concept called customer improvement. And customer improvement is about three things, really. Number one, providing unique and critical perspective to the customer on their business. Number two, offering a vision for how you can collectively improve their business in partnership. And then number three, demonstrating the ROI of your commercial relationship or partnership to date. And then, of course, proposed ROI through expanding that relationship in the future. So these are the behaviors that we observe and that we tested. These are the things that are out there that companies are running after in search of, not only retention, but growth and account defense. The question is, what kind of results do they yield? So I'll do quick hits here to kind of touch on each one. Number one, retention. Deliver the value. Really, this is the name of the game, right? So this is the obvious outcome. Driving product success and services we talked about previously, that gives you meaningful impact. So does customer improvement, interestingly, right? So just about the same bump that you'd see from product, service, and success, you get from customer improvement. Not surprisingly, you see a serious negative impact from aggressive selling, and then confidence in account team, no significant impact in terms of that driver. How about growth, though? Growth is really what we're after here. And this is where it gets really, really interesting. As I mentioned before, and we showed that initial slide, product success and service does not have a significant impact on your likelihood of actually growing a given account. Only two things do. Confidence in account team gives you a little bit of a bump, but the big uptick, the big lift here comes from customer improvement itself, right? And when it comes down to customer improvement, I want you to look closely at this because I think it's a really important point. There's some similarities here between what works for account growth on this page and what works in new business pursuits or in any given sales experience. What we've been dissecting and talking through for several months in this series now. What is it that comes out on top? What is it that's most important to buyers? Providing unique critical perspective. In other words, commercial insight, right? Just because they're already your customer after the initial sale doesn't mean you should ever stop teaching them about their business or helping them uncover overlooked problems that you can solve uniquely well. It's number one on both sides of the equation, which is pretty interesting. And we'll dig back into that in a few minutes. Number two, that improving the vision for improving their business, right? This is the pull through associated with that commercial teaching that we're doing as an incumbent vendor and supplier. Here's a problem we need to continue to solve together. And then finally, demonstrating the ROI of your commercial relationship. I see this as table stakes, right? We shouldn't kid ourselves. We got to prove the value of what we're doing in the first place if we're going to build and create a strong foothold for future growth and improvement as partners. And so those three things combined really make up this customer improvement idea. And that's really what's leading to growth that you can expect to see in an account. And that's what it comes down to. So if the lingering question here for you is, hey, look, like in new business pursuits, Challenger makes all the sense in the world. Can I still use Challenger concepts, ideas, commercial teaching, commercial insight with existing customers? The answer is definitively yes. Right, especially if your primary objective here is account growth. We're just referring to it as customer improvement here to stay true to the research. And by the way, if you look at that third one, customer improvement is the only thing we found that has a meaningful impact on likelihood of keeping your customers from considering a competitor during their renewal decision. Right, so there you have it. You can kind of check the box on all three. This idea of customer improvement benefiting all three: retention, growth, and defense against competition, according to the data that we uncovered here. What do you think, John?
I imagine like many of our listeners are looking at customer improvement, looking at the definition, and they might be saying to themselves, as you alluded to, hey, this sounds pretty familiar. When we talk about customer improvement, doesn't that sound like that other thing that Challenger's always talking about on the front of funnel of delivering on that sales experience? Yes. When it comes to customer improvement, you see that definition here, providing customers with unique critical perspective on their business, laying out the vision and outlining the ROI. That obviously correlates very nicely to the sales experience, what is proven to drive customer loyalty, the biggest driver of customer loyalty, by having a unique critical perspective on their business, helping them navigate alternatives, potential mistakes, being easy to buy from and supported within my organization. You could see the common thread that connects those two things is commercial teaching. Mike, you and I have heard a lot, so much over the years about becoming a challenger organization, right? Folks that read the book, that go through training with us, that have been longstanding partners with us. And I think to me, it's, if you want to be a challenger organization, this is it. This is what challenger organizations do. They are committed to commercial teaching, to providing that unique critical perspective on their business. There's a lot written on LinkedIn and otherwise about being a lifelong learner. Yeah, you should be a lifelong learner, absolutely, but you should also be a lifelong teacher. You should always be bringing that perspective, no matter where you're at in the customer life cycle, if they're early on or if they've been with you for 10, 20, 30 years. This is the thing that holds challenger organizations together, is commercial teaching. So I love that point that you land on it. And I think we're probably still at the point of strategy, and we want to get into some of that tactical component. So how are we going to do that? How are we going to grow accounts through commercial teaching? We're going to take this in 3 parts. Number 1, first, assess growth potential. There's a couple of ways to do that. We're going to talk through it. Number 2, of course, prepare to deliver that insight. How do you deliver commercial insight, commercial teaching in an environment where you are the status quo? Or how do you disrupt the status quo when you are the status quo? That's a great riddle for us to think about and scratch our heads on. And then finally, of course, what are some of the supporting tools? So stakeholder analysis and mapping and opportunity organization.